Then we have our next problem in communication and what we've just talked about. So there's what we say in the meetings, and there's outside voice and inside voice going on in both of those instances. And then there's what's said in the herd. This is what we like to call the meeting after the meeting, right? So yeah, and people are smiling. Okay, hands up, who's had the meeting after the meeting? Yeah, and if you didn't put your hand up, you might be lying right now. That's usually a given, right? And this is part of what we do. We communicate, we give our assent, we give our agreement, we say, sure, yeah, we'll get this done by then, and then we go off and we have that little subcommittee that says, oh, yeah, no, I don't really like this idea, and I don't know what George was thinking when he tried to put that forward, and it goes on and on and on. So then we end up with this, right? The elephant in the room. What is the elephant in the room fundamentally? The elephant is that presence in the room. It's the stuff that's going on that everyone knows is there and we're not talking about it, right? It might be the fact that, again, you've come to an agreement around something that needs to get done, but everybody knows there's a much bigger problem that isn't being addressed. For example, it might be that your boss is dictating what needs to be happening. And there's some resistance among the group, but people are not talking about the fact that that's taking place. They're just sort of nodding their assent and agreeing to do what they do. But we've got a huge problem underneath. Everyone knows it's there, but we're not dealing with it. And so our impact is, like you've just spoken about, conflict. Now, what comes to mind for you when you see this word, or even see that visual? What does conflict bring up for you? It's scary. Aggression. There's silence. Is there fear in the room? It's emotional, right? How many of you would view conflict as stressful? Okay. How many of you view conflict as negative? How many of you think conflict is exciting? Hands up. How many of you think conflict is fun? Nobody? I got no takers on this, right? How many of you think conflict is positive? If we never had conflict, what would the world be like? It'd be boring. Do you think we'd have new ideas, things created, all this new technology? What would the world be like if we didn't have conflict? Conflict is what causes us to create. It's what causes us to generate new ideas. It's what causes us to bring new things forward. So this is part of what we talk about, and as we go through this, part of it is reframing how we think about conflict. Because yes, it's emotional, and it's stressful, and it can be negative, but the problem is not typically conflict itself, it's how we deal with conflict that is really the issue, right? And most of us, how many of you were taught as kids to deal with conflict? If anything, you probably learned from who? Siblings, parents. And how many of you would say that your parents, siblings, families have fairly dysfunctional patterns of dealing with conflict? Hands up, right? Absolutely. And so I've tried to reframe that now in my family, where I try to put the fun in dysfunctional, right? And this is how we start to view conflict. So the more we can start to look at it in the way of, yes, conflict needs to happen, and this is really what conflict is telling us, is that something needs to happen. Something needs to change, it needs to shift, or a voice needs to be heard that hasn't been heard up to this point. And if we can start viewing conflict this way, it completely changes how we approach it. First piece we want to talk about is the truth assumption. How many of you are familiar with the term mindset? Few people, right? There's various different ways we can say it. It's mindset, mental models. Fundamentally, we're talking about our view of the world. And we each have a different one. So that's our first problem. Everybody has a different mindset because it's based on our assumptions, our beliefs, what we grew up with, what we were taught, our values, the whole bit. It's our framework for how we see the world. And this is our mindset. We have those blinders on, and this is how we go forward. Right? And so it determines what we see. It's our filter through which we view the world. And based on what we see and we're taking in, that determines how we act, how we go forward, how we deal with it. And the biggest challenge about mindset is that we don't even know it exists. it's below our level of awareness. And so you're like, okay, Sasha, this is not helping me. Like, how do I know then if my belief, my assumption, how do I test it out? Are you ready to test one out? Okay, here's the first thing I need you to do. Push the glasses away from you to the center of the table. Move any breakable objects away from you at this moment in time. Okay, everyone got that part done? Second part, roll up your sleeves. Now you need to turn to the person next to you. Make sure you have a partner. If you're an odd number at your table, somebody move a chair and find a partner. Now I want you to turn to face your partner, look deep into their eyes. Awkward. And I want you to look at them and say, I am going to arm wrestle you this morning. Okay, now, hang on. Here are the rules, okay? Here are the rules. I am asking you to arm wrestle with your partner, okay? Here's what you need to know. Obviously, the goal of this exercise is to win. And winning means bringing your partner's arm all the way down to the table, right? Most of us have an idea of how this works. So you've got arms linked. The goal is to win to bring, okay, hang on. So that's your first task, okay? And the second goal is to win as many times as possible in 15 seconds. So get yourself set up. We'll go on my count. Are you ready? On your mark, get set, go. Two more seconds! And time! So I just want you to hold on to that example, because how often in life do we go in with that mentality of I win, you lose? Or, more often in our language, I am right, you are wrong. Right? And it's classic. And I teach this stuff, and here's one of my conversations with my last boyfriend. Notice I say last, right? Because he used to frustrate me intensely, right? We would get into these debates, and he was constantly arguing over things. And I would say to him, you have this intense desire to be right all the time. No, I don't. Oh, yes, you do. Oh, no, I don't. Oh, you do. You need to be right. And I had to prove I needed to be right about his need to be right. Like, how ridiculous does this become? Okay, but this is the trap that we get into as we go through life, many of us do, with this whole assumption that I need to be right, and therefore that makes you wrong. And the only problem is that that isn't true. And here's the essence of what we're talking about today. How often is conflict about facts? Do we argue much that 2 + 2 = 4? Right? That's a fact. 2 + 2 is 4 is a fact. But we're not usually arguing about facts. We're arguing about different opinions. We're arguing about our interpretations of information. We're arguing about our values. The fact that it means more to me that you spent all that money than it means to you, because you like to spend money, right? So we get into all this stuff all the time. So mostly when we're arguing, we're not arguing about what's true. We're arguing about what's important to each of us. And that's a really key distinction. So as we go into that, consider your mindset. And I know that's hard to do, because again, you didn't know what your mindset was around arm wrestling until we just went through this exercise, right? But ask yourselves, when you go into a conflict situation, am I going in this to be right and to win, or am I going in this to learn something? And hopefully we both come out feeling better and not feeling quite so beaten up and bruised. Is anyone sore from that arm wrestling, by the way? You okay? All right? Okay, there'll be no physical contact in this next piece. But I want you to share with your partner a time where maybe you felt like that. How many of you have been cut off in traffic? Oh, almost everyone, right? How many of you have received bad service or were treated rudely by someone else? Oh, yeah. Okay, so think of one of those experiences that made you feel like this, and you're going to take a minute with your partner and just each share like a quick 30, 60-second story of here's what happened, and I want you to share here's what I was thinking and feeling. That inside voice stuff, or maybe you were saying it inside your car, maybe it was outside voice, But share with them that stuff that was going on for you. Okay, so quick minute, turn to your partner and you each get to share a story. Now the second question for you is, how many of you have been on the other side of the table? Or in the other set of shoes, so to speak, where you were the one who cut somebody off in traffic. You were the one who was kind of rude to someone else. Hands up, who's been that person? Okay? Yeah, if you're being pretty honest, sure we have. And hands up, did you have a really good reason for it? But it comes down to we are so quick to judge other people based on observable behavior. But when it's me, oh no, I didn't mean to do that. You know, I was really busy, I was swamped, I didn't see you come into the room, and so therefore I just ignored you. I mean, we have all the reasonings in the world because we know our intent. The problem is, I have no idea what anybody else's intent is. How am I going to find that out? I could ask, but how often do we do that? Right? Sometimes if the opportunity is not even there, but most often we don't even do it. We just assume. We just jump to the conclusion that, oh, you meant to hurt me when you did that. Oh, you were rude to me on purpose. Oh, you don't like me. You like me though, right? Okay. See, I'm just checking that out because she was giving me kind of this look and I'm like, I could go away thinking she doesn't like me, but I'm going to double check. You don't like me?
No, she lied.
Oh, she lied. Okay, I got issues with this table up here at the front, but I will deal with that later. I'll park this table to the side. Now, I realize what we're giving you in this last little bit, we're giving you a bit of a framework around how to have a more successful conversation. The reality is, of course, we cover this in great depth in our half-day and full-day workshops where people literally get to even script some of this stuff out and have the conversations with each other. In this instance this morning, we're at least going to give you some of the tips to get you going and recognizing that most of what we've covered is really what you most need. That's the hardest part, is getting through all of that stuff that happened before you even have the conversation with the person you're in conflict with. This next piece is about, okay, I've kind of got this worked out, now how do I go into this? And the hardest part, I believe, in any tense conflict situation or any kind of disagreement is the very opening. If you can get through the first 60, 120 seconds of that conversation, you're in a much better place. So the most critical piece I want to talk about is this opening statement. And there's a few different components to it, and I don't want to overly complicate it, but just to show it up on the screen for you, it's really about naming the issue, the impact on you, why it matters, identifying your contribution to the issue, here might be a novelty for many of us, and your wish to resolve it. And you need to say all of that in under 60 seconds. Now, why do you think I would ask you to do that? Yes, there's definitely that. You don't think too much about it, you just get it out. What would be another reason? Keep the other person engaged. How many of you have gone into a sort of a tense situation, you know conflict might be coming, and the person starts launching in with a whole diatribe about everything that you've done, or this has happened, and then you did this, and then I said this, and what happens to you? Yeah, you start to shut down, right? Because when we go into a conflict situation, how many of you, your defenses are already up? You're ready, right? You're going into battle. You've got to do something. So this first 60 seconds is key because it will set the entire tone for the conversation you are about to have. But if I had, for example, just turned to Shane and said, Shane, I'm having a bit of an issue with the pace of the presentation right now. I'm feeling a little bit anxious and frustrated because I'm recognizing that we're short of time, and it matters to me because I want us to do a really good job and respect the time limit that we've set. I'm worried that I've contributed to it because I know I spoke a little bit longer in the last section, but I want us to resolve this and finish up the presentation and do it bang on.